just talk a little bit here, and then we'll start into the game, and he can join in when he gets there, I guess.
Yep. All right, here we go. I'm about to start streaming right now. Okay. We're live on Twitch. My first stream on Twitch. Hopefully you can see both Brian and I. We're waiting for Alan to get in here. He is, of course, the star attraction, so we won't get the show started without Alan. But hopefully you can see.
You and I.
Well, this game sadly took place before I was born, so this is.
This is true. And while we're talking here, I only see 2 people online right now. I'm wondering if it's totally open or if we should.
I haven't. I don't know if I've got the stats here, but let's double check. I mean, we have only been live for a couple seconds, so that might be
true.
Let's see. How do I? So everybody's a newbie at this, or I'm a newbie at this, anyways. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have got it figured it out because they probably do this. If you're a gamer, you're familiar with this.
Right. Mountain Singers are on.
All right.
Bruce McGuire followed me. Bruce McGuire followed me. St. Charlie followed me. Jared. I got some people following.
Okay.
0 viewers at the moment. It says. So let's.
Chris says, Chris Lindholm said, I'm watching. I'm not logged in.
Okay. Oh, so.
That's it. You have to be logged in in order to see it. So that's
okay.
Great. So maybe we should just thank you for that, Chris.
Yes.
And if anybody wants to message me during this or text me, or if you want to log in, you can leave you can chat online here too and ask Alan questions when hopefully he gets in here. So, yeah. So probably get this game going. It's a game from 1979, and just a very brief background in that, I've seen some soccer on TV, soccer made in Germany and other things, and it was Minnesota Kicks that really, there's Alan. Alan's getting online now.
Oh, great.
Keep talking here. So it was the Minnesota Kicks that got me into soccer. I mean, I was so overtaken with the Kicks in 1976 and went to a ton of games between 76 and when they, I think 79 or 80 was their last season. Attendance really started to droop in 79 and 80. Although at this game tonight that we're going to watch between Detroit, I believe the announcer says during the game there were 30,000 at this game. So that's still a great attendance. But you got to remember, there were crowds of 40,000 out at the Met during this time. It was a pretty amazing period of time, especially for a game that no one had really had much connection to in the past. So, and we actually have a little stream going. We're on Zoom with the 3 hosts here, so we are kind of watching Alan walk to, I think, his computer, and we should be pretty good to go here. While he's walking up, I'm going to do a quick introduction of Alan. Alan played for West Brom Albion from 68 until 1975, making 131 appearances. He then played for the Kicks from 76 to 79, making 103 appearances, scored 4 goals during that time. And then he moved around to a couple different teams, San Jose Earthquakes, the Los Angeles Aztecs, came back to the Kicks in 81 for their indoor season, and then went to Toronto Blizzard and actually got he was actually capped by the U.S. men's national team in 83 with Team America, and went on to become the manager of the Strikers indoor team from 84 till 88. After that, Alan was deeply involved with developing the youth game here in Minnesota. And before there were any indoor domes, as we know, during the winter around here, we have to use them. He created the first year-round training and playing facility, soccer training and playing facility in Maplewood called Corner Kick. The place used to just be packed on weekends. And I know, Anthony, I coached you as a youth, and we used to play games there as well.
Yep.
So in recent years, Alan's been coaching University of Minnesota men's club team, the Egan boys high school team, and is currently involved with developing and now marketing an online coaching system and help for youth coaches and players that uses 3D modeling, which is pretty cool. And that's called Moti Sports, MOTI Sports. So you can look that up. I could drop a link for anybody that actually joins the chat. I'll drop a link in there. Otherwise, at the end, when we're done, I'll try to remember to tweet that out as well. Alan, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Terrific. So I just did an introduction to you.
Yeah, I heard it. You were spot on. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Alan, it's a pleasure and an honor to meet you, at least virtually. And I'm going to get this game underway, and hopefully the audio will work out where we can hear the commentators and still talk to each other pretty effectively here.
Absolutely.
We'll take the opening kickoff, and soccer is underway tonight from
Do you guys have audio?
Have audio.
Not of the game. Very, very little.
If they can score 3, would lock up a playoff spot. That's what's at stake tonight for Minnesota, who have already captured another division title. They're looking, of course, to extend their 10-game home winning streak. This is Twellman up from defense to ace Netzelenge.
Pretty hard to hear.
Marked away by Keith Furphy, and Steve Sargent will take over for the Express. Sargent looked to drop it back to Jim Brown, but you could see 2 strikers for Minnesota anticipating the pass back. So instead he sends it forward to the Wizard, Trevor Francis. And you can see right now that Nordquist apparently will be assigned to mark Trevor Francis. Nordquist, who holds the record for most caps, most appearances in World Cup play with Sweden in 115 games. But watch it now as Osborne moves to the penalty area. Marked away from him by Chico Hamilton. Hamilton chased into the corner by Trevor Francis.
So, Alan, perhaps you can explain to those of us who were not watching back in the NASL days why there is a permanent offside line, or what that offside line even means.
The 35-yard line.
Yeah, that's
to the corner. But there's Benny Dargall to mark it away from Chico Hamilton.
Well, Alan, can you turn your volume up at all? I'm having a really difficult time hearing you.
Against Willie, pushing off against Eddie Colhoun. It'll be free kick Detroit.
So,
Steve Sargent plays it to Gus Moffett, and the Express move it out. Detroit winning here last year against the Minnesota Kicks.
So,
good pass ahead.
Anthony, you may have to turn down the audio a bit when Alan is talking.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't hear what he said there. So, Alan, what were you saying?
I'm saying that's 35-yard line. That is the equivalent, in those days, that's the equivalent of a halfway line where offsides were allowed. So it made the game wider in terms of the field was uncluttered with players. So it really allowed players like Ace Netzelenge, who was on the Kicks team, to be so creative and made many more one-on-one situations where you couldn't have covering.
Not a good shot on goal.
I believe the stats also said that there were 2.5 more goals scored in the North American Soccer League than any other league that was going on in the world. So it's
except for the kicks. Except for the kicks, because you were defending, right?
I was a defender, yes.
So I was just going to run down the players real quick in this game. The video is pretty jumpy. I don't know if yours is good as that, but ours is pretty jumpy on here. But basically, let's see, it was Alan Willie, Ron Kutcher, Tim Twellman, and yes, that's the father of Taylor Twellman, Ace Netzelenge, Eric Nordquist, and Chico Hamilton, Tony Wan, Tino Lettieri, Steve Litt, Willie Morgan, and Alan West. And Alan, that brings up the question, where were you in this game?
I was injured. I don't know whether it was physically or mentally, but it was one of the two.
Well, according to the stats, you only missed 3 games in this whole season, so...
Yeah, I missed many games, but I believe also I might have been rested because we had an important game in the next game, and also we had a great record against Detroit, and we thought we could manage them by resting players also.
That makes sense, and you guys had already captured the conference title.
Correct.
And they had to score 3 goals in this game in order to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they had extremely good players. One of the names that just came up was Trevor Francis. He was he played in Detroit for a year, one season, but then he went back to Europe and he played. I think he played for Inter Milan and also then came back to England, and he gained, I believe, about 50 caps, and he was just prolific player.
Yeah, I took some notes on him, actually, and he played for Birmingham City, scored 119 goals, played for Nottingham Forest, Man City, Sampdoria, Atlanta, Queen's Park Rangers, and Sheffield Wednesday. He played in 627 games in his career and scored 232 goals. It's pretty incredible.
Well, that starts to give you some idea of the quality of players that were scattered around in the North American Soccer League at that time. Everybody started to talk about it being where players went to retire and get a last few games or a last few seasons, and that wasn't entirely true. There were a lot of youth players that came into the North American Soccer League and proliferated and went back to Europe and did extremely well.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the players that everyone knows on the Cosmos, where they had Beckenbauer and Canalia and everyone, this era had players like Johan Cruyff and Eusebio playing in the NASL.
Absolutely.
I once heard Ray Hudson say that he at one time was sitting at the center circle waiting to kick off a game, and he looked around him, and there were more World Cup captains in one place on that field than he had ever seen in his life before.
Yeah. It was a marvelous time.
Yeah.
How is the game for you guys now? Is it still stuttering, or is it...
Yeah, about the same, unfortunately.
Right.
It's their first try at this, you know?
Yeah. Bear with us for a little bit, folks. I'm using, perhaps ill-advisedly, I'm using a rather old laptop for this.
Well, the other thing that Ross was shanked.
Certainly watch it on YouTube.
What's that, Alan? I'm sorry.
I said other people could go and watch it on YouTube if they wanted a better...
Right. It is on YouTube, so you can catch that. They blanked out this commercial. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, we are the recipient of some commercials during this broadcast. So those are kind of fun to watch, actually, for me. It's pretty funny.
That Budweiser commercial is going to be great when it comes on.
No. It's so sexist. It's horrible.
It's a 1979 beer commercial. It is exactly what you would expect.
Just embarrassing.
Nice little header through.
Yeah, I think you might have been talking about Nordquist before, Alan, and I for some reason I was thinking of Trevor Francis, who is what I was talking about. Chris Sidholm caught that mistake, so yeah.
He just took the ball very quickly away from Twellman. move quickly on the goal and hit it very
Well,
firm.
Bjorn Nordquist was, I guess at the time, he was the all-time caps leader internationally. He had 100-some for Sweden, and he's since been overtaken even in Sweden alone by Thomas Ravelli. But that's, the players that were making up this Kicks team and the other teams in the NASL, they aren't the names that you necessarily know if you're somebody who came to the game later like I did in the 90s, but they were big name players.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you had several of the best players that ever played in the world at one time during the 70s. Was the best player that I've ever played with.
I'm sorry, Alan, I couldn't. Who was that? That was the best player?
George Best.
Oh, right. Georgie Best.
So, George, I played with him in San Jose and played against him for the 5 playing. He was just a marvelous player. And that includes playing Royce, Beckenbauer, Kubilas. George Best was outrageous.
Yeah, that's cool.
He might have been taken over now as from, and I would give that to Messi now because he's finally got the stage where he's played as many seasons and games as George Best.
Sure.
Tremendous goal scorer. Get a lot from crosses from Willie Morgan and from assists from Ace Netzelenge.
Well, this time, Alan, I'm interested to know, the Kicks played at Metropolitan Stadium, which held 50,000 people. And obviously the Cosmos were a big draw in attendance whenever they were playing, but they were really the outliers for the NASL. A lot of the teams were playing in much smaller stadiums. In fact, the trend was to move from, like the New England team was playing at Foxborough and then moved to a much smaller stadium in town. What were the different atmospheres like across the league in that way?
Well, you didn't know until you got there as to what time what would come on any given.
Minnesota's had a few shots tonight, but they've been forced to take most of them from the outside. They've been hitting them rather wide and rather high.
They
so
left
that the Express can keep them that far out. Then
the franchise
it's easier to keep that clean sheet
they were average
is looking for.
1,000. They were very. The only thing wrong with Met Center or Met Stadium is that Calvin Griffith, the owner of the Twins at that time, was so annoyed that the Kicks were getting double and triple the crowds that they were getting, that he's the one who pushed to have the Metrodome, because soccer fans were at that game when they went taken indoors. It was somewhat right, not fully. And then the Twins, even when they went to the Metrodome, the Twins didn't get great fans or fan support at that time. It was only when Kirby Puckett started to hit everything out of the park that they
It helps to have a good team.
Yeah, I'm going to make this hard on you, Anthony. Maybe when Alan is talking, it seems to be like the volume goes back and forth between the game and him and back instead of equally. So maybe you want to pull that volume down each time. I don't know if that's possible or not.
I'll give it a shot. I'll see what I can do that way, yeah.
Yeah, because then I can hear him clearly, for sure. Alan, tell me a little bit about playing on that. I mean, I remember watching it too, and I think the announcer and the color commentator from Detroit on this game, but they said, "Oh, it's not even affecting the playing on the infield." But I've played on baseball fields before, and it pretty much sucks to play on an infield like that. You go to dirt to grass, because the ball will be, going along and all of a sudden hits the dirt and just speeds up, and it's really hard to play.
Yeah, in terms of psychologically, it was difficult. But I think that as players, we just got on with it. It was like, it's the same for both teams. When you're playing in it, you need to be careful. When you're looking at your footwear, you need to make sure that you are taking into consideration where you're going to play. Like I played most of my games for the Kicks as a center back or as in central midfield. And so I was in that area a lot when we were defending. So I would change my footwear a little bit, and depending on whether there was rain or not. If it rains, then that gets mushy and you do lose your footing. So the grass was pretty good all the way through. The infield was unpredictable, and as you say, the ball skidded a lot, and it was just a totally different trajectory that the ball took. But same for both teams, you just get on with it.
So I'm being told that there are several messages on the chat, but I'm not seeing. The only one that I see is for myself that I put with the link to Modi Sports. I don't know, Anthony, if you want to check that out, see?
I see one thing. I see one question for Alan, which is
Bruce says it's full of messages.
Favorite stadium to play in and least favorite stadium to play in.
One of them has to be the Rose Bowl when I played against the LA Aztecs, and then when I actually played for the Aztecs, that was the home field. So that was when we had 40,000 people in there. That was a great environment. Some of the noisiest games that I played in over in the States was at Giant Stadium against the Cosmos, and we always drew good crowds there. The Cosmos enjoyed having us come to their field because people knew that there was going to be a good game on hand. So Giant Stadium was great. The Metrodome here was not Metrodome. The Mets Stadium was neat because we did a lot of great things there. So you have fond memories of results and historical moments within the game in Minnesota there.
And your least favorite, if you're going to put you down for the worst place that you had to play?
I think it might have been the stadium in Hawaii, and I can't remember the name of it at that point, but it had the worst AstroTurf that I've ever played on. It was like playing on a parking lot or like playing on 35W. And I remember one game that we played there, I think the temperature, the air temperature, 106. The temperature on the field was about 130, 140. And my shoes came apart. It was like they were just flapping because the heat. It's obviously I used to run a lot and I was so quick that they probably melted and melded because of that. But I remember that distinctly in terms of the turf was just so hot it was intolerable. It was, if you sat down or lay on it, you'd jump up because it was burning you. And as I say, I lost a nice pair of shoes that were only just broken in. And that was an occasion that I remember distinctly.
So for the sneakerheads, what was your boot of choice?
I went through several shoe manufacturers. I was fortunate enough to get some shoe contracts. I wore Adidas an awful lot, but then I also wore Pony, and also one more shoe, which was Puma. So it was between those three pairs of shoes, really. A lot of Adidas. Went to Pony as they sponsored the league a little bit, and was able to get in on some sponsorship deals with Pele and Canalia, who also wore them. So we sort of banded together and got Pony as a very reputable company where doing uniforms and shoes. And then the only pair of shoes I've got left from my playing days are a pair of Puma.
I see somebody here. I'm not sure who it is, but they said that you coach Gerbear 45 says Alan coached my high school varsity squad for a few years. So you as I said, you're currently Coach Egan, but did you coach anywhere else high school?
No.
Okay.
I did clinics for several high schools, and I was sort of a pseudo coach for several associations and clubs. and also helped some high school coaches.
Right.
But Egan was the only full-time position as a head coach.
Got it.
Somebody wants to know what your favorite memory of the 9-2 win over the Cosmos is, other than the final score.
I think it was watching the wonderful play that Alan Willie had that evening. I think he scored 4 goals, and he was just spectacular. And it was one of those games where you just
actually he scored 5 goals in that game.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, he was just superb in all the things that he was doing. Everything went right for him. It was one of those magical games that you're just so pleased at the end of the game to be part of it.
Somebody mentioned the pass back too, and that was one thing I had in my notes I wanted you to talk about, because I think there's probably a lot of younger people here that may have never watched a game with the pass back. And when did that change? And tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know the exact date that changed. I think it was in the early 90s.
It was about 92, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be that type of time. It's I never really hit me as being an important element. It was a way of keeping the game moving. In my era, the goalkeeper could pick that ball up and hold it for a long period of time, and then put it down and dribble up and just waste a lot of time. So I think that was a good rule to put in, where back passes are disallowed, and it was a natural thing perhaps and I believe it happened in Italy, where the discussions were that the Italians were cheating the fans out of memorable moments in the game, because they used to just waste so much time getting the ball back to the goalkeeper and just wasting valuable time and entertainment time.
Sure.
So it was a good rule. I'm glad that they made that decision and transitioned into getting the game moving again.
I think especially the second half, we're going to see more of Ace Nesselengwe. Wanted to talk to a little bit about him. And here is Alan Willie scoring.
A goal for the Artful Dodger. Here we go.
Yes.
What a surprise.
Yes.
Trapped out of the play, and Minnesota takes the lead, 1-0. And for Willie, his 20th goal of the year.
Well, I think if you charged errors in soccer, you'd have to charge it to Jim Brown. You either hold the ball or you stay back there, and Jim punched it. Willie was able to pick up the ball. Jim was totally out of the play, and Willie really did very well, because there are 3 Express defenders on the line, and he managed to hit it hard and low and just inside that far post.
Alan, tell me a little bit about Alan and Alan Willie, and it sure is fun that you guys were my heroes at 19, 20, 21 years old. And you weren't that much older than me, but now we're friends, which is really cool. But tell us about Alan and how opportunistic he was. But he was also a great goal scorer, but he was so opportunistic. There are some people that, we see that in hockey and other sports, like Taylor Twellman, you think about somebody like him, just had a nose for the goal, knew where to be at the right time.
Well, he was also happy to receive a lot of good coaching from not only players on his team, but also coaches that he did his trade under. And so staying down the middle and carving up defenders and centre backs was his major characteristic. He used to play on the shoulders of players and was always deceptive in terms of his runs. He would make 3 or 4 steps in one direction, cut back inside of it, and then double round again to get players off their footing. And all he needed was that half a step, and that's why he scored so many goals and created avenues and channels that he could just take players by surprise and get goal. I was so thankful for the fact that he stayed in the United States throughout his career. And gave us all of his great play because he was somebody who could have gone back to Europe and had an incredible career in many countries. As you say, he has a knack for finding the goal. We used to call him Sniffer sometimes because he used to sniff out and also, we called him several names.
Well, Alan Willie is in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool. For his period of time played here, but he was an incredible talent and still living here in the Twin Cities. Has always lived in Bloomington.
He lives in Egan now.
Oh, he's in Egan. He moved. Okay.
He's moved to Egan.
And the other player that stayed around town, we should talk to him, and he's playing in this game, is Steve Litt. And Steve, although not quite as influential as you were as far as coaching youth in Minnesota, Steve also did a lot of coaching as well.
He did. He had both of his children play, and he did a lot of work in the Bloomington, or in the Burnsville area, which is where he lives now. And so he did a lot of unrecognized work that he's very.
Another goal
is a very Hamilton, and so he's contributed well for the game of soccer in Minnesota.
Yeah, Chico Hamilton scores here.
Yeah.
Hamilton had got completely free, but then Jim did his best to cover the angle, but no Detroit defender came within sight. Keith Furphy came back, tried to defend. Valiant effort on the line, but there it is.
I grew up in England. He played for Aston Villa for a long time there, and he and I not only grew up playing against each other in our teenage years, we both played for the England youth national team in the Junior World Cup in 1968.
He was he an outside midfielder in general?
Yeah, he played left wing. Yeah.
Okay, but he scored a lot of goals. I looked at his record, and for a midfielder, he had a lot of goals. He was a great goal scorer.
Yep. Well, he had a wonderful left foot. I mean, he was very predominantly left-footed. I think he probably only used his right foot to make a couple of tackles at some stage, and he just used his left foot, and it was like a wand. He had great control. He beat people. He was physically very strong, and he was extremely quick. He was very agile. So he dinked people out in lots of times on the flank, and his service was just superb service. He made lots of curling balls in, and I can guarantee if you look at the assists that Chico got, I bet Alan Woolley scored 70% of his goals from Chico.
Really interesting.
Yeah. There's Steve Litt. You're just giving him accolades there. Running across the pitching mound. That was AstroTurf, in actual fact. They used to move the mound and then put an AstroTurf strip on there. That was the most area. When it rains, that circle there, that's a change of color where I think they've got a Kicks logo on it. That was just a neck breaker. You got to be very careful how you stood on that, especially if you had cleats on.
Sure. It's probably just a piece of plywood with AstroTurf over it, most likely.
Correct. And it was first generation AstroTurf.
Yeah. Kind of like what you had at corner kick in the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah,
you kept upgrading, but yeah. Hey, there's another question for you. Let's see, it says, question for Alan. Player who didn't have their name mentioned too often, but was one of the biggest contributors.
Oh, boy. It depends what year kicks, because we had a transitioning squad of players where 3 or 4 players would not come back each year because of their commitments with their English club. We had, the first year in 76, we had 2 of the best fullbacks that have ever played. That's Ron Webster and what's the other guy's name? Tony One.
Oh, Tony's playing in this game.
Yeah, and so the transitions that we had, players didn't come back because of their club commitments. And we had Alan West was somebody that was a magician with the ball. His distribution was excellent and super good. One player that is not playing, I don't think, in this game is Ron Futcher, and he was a ramrod up top. And Alan Willie really got a lot of the other assists would come from Ron Futcher, and who set Alan Willie up on opportunities.
And Ron is playing in this game. Ron is paired up with Alan up top.
I thought I saw a mop of blonde hair there, which was fine.
Yeah.
Number 18 would be Ron Futcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that
I'm sure you've got some Ron Futcher stories too. I've heard some Ron Futcher stories myself, even.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, Ron actually lives in Tampa now. He's been over here he came back to retire, as it were, and so he lives in Tampa. And I'm in touch with him every once in a while. But he and his wife are there, and hopefully doing well.
He's actually settled down.
I don't know whether that's possible.
He was known as quite the playboy along the strip, 494, where all the athletes hung out, right?
He was a character. One of the things I was going to say is that we were very fortunate to have a lot of really good Canadian and American players on our squad, and you see Tim Twellman is playing in this game, and he was just a very, very solid player, and he got the job done. He was just a workhorse. I think that might be another goal from Alan Willie, huh?
It is
indeed. Get some audio here.
Perfect center for Willie.
Eddie Cahoon, who's normally our man in the middle, was out there with Futcher. The cross came over.
It's Futcher.
Just as Jim Brown, no chance whatsoever. It's not good defensive work.
You see there
where you were saying.
Alan Willie there, he got in the channels, he got in between players, and just played off Eddie Cahoon's shoulder. And I was just saying, Eddie Cahoon and I played for West Bromwich Albion for a couple of years together. He was a Scottish national team player and good guy, good player.
Just a little comment on Alan Willie. I know that for Loons fans, that when Christian Ramirez first came to the team and for a couple of years afterwards, Alan actually meet with him occasionally and work on him getting to, making near post runs, and getting there because he likes to do that a lot. And so it was interesting. I've talked to Alan about it, and I've also talked to Christian Ramirez about it. And he definitely helped Christian Ramirez's game.
Well, Alan's the right person to learn from, so I'm glad that Christian did that. It's uncanny that other players don't do the same things.
So as this is going on, you spoke of Tim Twellman, and
yep.
Tim was from St. Louis, and when he was living here, he had Taylor. Taylor was
yep.
born in Burnsville, Minnesota, actually, and Taylor still kind of considers this as kind of his second home. But I had the fortune to interview both Taylor and Tim at one point. It's one of my favorite interviews I've ever done, and the two of them together it would just crack me up. I mean, they would go back and forth at each other. But one of the things that Taylor talked about was how hard it was for his dad to be an American playing in an American league. I mean, there were hardly any Americans on the field at that time.
Well, we had to have. At one stage, I know they had it so that you got to 4 players at one time. In this game, I'm only counting Tino Lethierry and Tim Twellman.
Yeah, I think early on, I think they had a pretty minimal amount.
I believe in '79 the rule was 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he talked about that. It was a difficult period of time just to make that team, and he was very proud of himself for not only making the team but being on the field most of the time too. Yeah,
he was extremely solid. He was a a good player.
Yeah. So somebody asked about Ace, what your thoughts on Ace are, and Ace was, and we're going to see him more in the second half, and I had some notes here, but I'll let you speak to this. But just so, I mean, the guy was incredible, but one thing that a lot of younger people may not know is because of apartheid, he came from South Africa. He never was allowed to play for the South African national team, which is just a shame because he was probably the best or one of the best players of his country at that time.
Without a doubt. I mean, he did stuff with the ball that I was just amazed that anybody could actually do it. It's like I watched him manipulate the ball, and I just shook my head in disbelief that I saw him doing the juggling and the ball manipulation that he had. His first touch was immaculate. He was somebody that always looked around. He had an awareness that was astute. His just movement on and off the ball was just, he was like a gazelle. And he was my roommate for 3 years, so I got to know him extremely well. I took it upon myself to be his protector, as it were. If anybody kicked Ace or gave him any trouble, then I would act like a hockey goon and find the biggest player on their team and put him on the deck and get a warning going out to all the other players: do not touch Ace, because you could be. Yeah, I was like an enforcer, and Ace was my number one person to protect at any time.
And, I mean, you were a skillful defender, but you were kind of a hard ass. I remember that.
Oh yeah, it's like, don't mess with any of my kicks players. It was really that simple. Ace was just a special guy. He's also in the Soccer Hall of Fame, and he just went about his business. He was solid in his mental attitude to the game was immaculate. He made sure that he got assists when somebody was open. He'd get them the ball, and very often he'd just continue to get that person the ball. And in the end, I think he forced them to score goals because he laid it on a plate for them. Just a great teammate. I loved Ace. I'm still in touch with his wife on an ongoing basis, and seeing some of the work that his foundation is doing. So he's still making inroads in Soweto with all of his the money.
Uh-oh. Sorry, folks. We are having some difficulties with Zoom meeting. We will be back shortly, as soon as we can. In the meantime, enjoy this classic Budweiser commercial.
Yeah, just for you. That distinctively clean, crisp taste that says Budweiser. Hey, this Bud's for you.
3-1, Minnesota leading Detroit. The goal moments ago by Keith Furphy brought some life back into the Express for Keith, his 14th goal of the year. And Keith broke that 6-game scoreless streak, and he picked a good time to do it. And what a great play by Furphy. And you're right, Roger, the way he was playing early in this half.
Hey everyone, not sure if you can hear me.
Playing with a lot of confidence.
Anthony?
I can hear you, Brian.
Okay, cool. So we're back on. We're waiting for Alan.
Could well be the ball game if the Express can.
Did you turn the audio up on the game again?
I did. Can you not hear it?
No, I can't.
Minnesota have not been a second half team this year. It's interesting.
Oh, I know why.
41 goals, 26 of them have come in the second half, 15 in the first half, and they maybe Nordquist tires a little bit, who knows, but certainly the second half hasn't been the best half for Minnesota, and the Express aren't out of this game yet.
Cheers, everyone.
Brian, we missed an Express goal, but so did the broadcast. It happened during the commercial break.
Right to the goal mouth, and Tino laid it on the half hop. 3:40 remaining, first half of play. 3-1, Minnesota leading. The Fabulous 50s are back again, and they're here on TV 50. Yes, it's Happy Days again with your favorite
Happy Days
and all his friends, starting in September on TV 50.
The assists on Keith Furphy's goal went to David Bradford and to Roger Osborne, who hit the little through ball to Keith on the right there.
That really made the play. Bradford chipping it in the corner to Keith, and then Keith finished it off beautifully. Got it on the left foot and drilled it from a sharp angle. 3-1, Minnesota leading. Inside for Willie, the ever-dangerous Willie. Across for Futcher. Beautifully for 12-man. 12-man chipped it back in the middle, and the header by Futcher just over the crossbar. Goal kick, Detroit.
There we go. Alan, you're back?
I am back. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's entirely my fault. We're running this on a shoestring operation, so Zoom decided that our 45-minute meeting was as long as they were going to allow and cut us off without any warning. So we may have to do it once more when we get towards the end of the second half as well.
Yeah. Or everyone may be tired of us at that point. So not of Alan, but of you and I, Anthony.
That's certainly a risk.
I mentioned this earlier for anybody who's joined on a little later, but I actually coached Anthony. He's the same age as my oldest son, and coached him and my son back a long time ago, huh, Anthony?
Longer ago than either of us would like to admit, I'm sure.
So I have no volume again? Game?
I turned the volume down on the game, but...
Yeah.
So, Alan, somebody wants to know if Pele ever nutmegged you. I have a feeling the answer is no, and I know for a fact that you made him cry.
And actually, he did nutmeg me, but he didn't get the ball. So yes to the first part, but no to keeping possession.
That's Bill McGuire who asked that.
Yeah, he was a good player, obviously. Heralded around the world. He's still very active and doing stuff in New York. Just a pleasure to have been on the same field as him and have the fond memories that I do.
Yeah, I actually, when I tweeted this, I had a number of pictures, and one of them was a picture of you beside playing, defending Pele.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite pictures as well.
Yet another fantastic Budweiser commercial here.
So tell me about Ace a little more. Was he a true number 10, or where did he play on the field? I don't recall completely, but I know he was a great passer of the ball. You know, as you said, great vision.
Ace was such a handful that you just put him on the field and you go, get Ace the ball and then create something, Ace. So it was like he he was like a freebie player. He was a libero out there. You didn't ask him to make crunching tackles or try and dispossess people. He would pick off people's passes and show little interest in defending, and then all of a sudden come out of nowhere and just intercept and go forward and make incredible strides in a counterattack. And the opponents invariably couldn't leave one player on him. So there was always somebody who was marking him. Then there was somebody thinking about covering. And so he opened up so many channels and so many opportunities for other players.
Right there on the ball.
You didn't really put him into a position. If you, I mean, you supposing that he was a number 10 is probably correct, but it depends. There is no uniformity of these numbered positions anymore. You know, I was a number 6, but I played as a centre back. So we have to be careful what you're talking about with he was a 6 or a 5 or a 4. I'm going qualify it, and then you understand how the team was playing a little bit.
Got it. You know, I heard the saying once years ago that soccer is a simple game made complicated by the players, and Ace was one of those players that just kind of simplified the game, didn't he?
Well, yeah, he got the ball, looked up, made passes where people were open, and if they weren't open, he would drive a strong run with the ball towards their defenders to make something happen. So, yeah, it qualifies as being a simplifier of the game, and also being able to manipulate the game to his own good effect.
So I'm curious, Alan, you mentioned the good American players that you had on the Kicks.
Yep.
You eventually went ahead and got American citizenship and played not only for the U.S. national team in international play, where you played against, I think it was Haiti.
Correct.
But you played for Team America when the U.S. Soccer Federation actually entered essentially the national team in the NASL. Tell us a little bit about that and why that necessarily didn't go as well as the Federation was perhaps hoping.
Well, it went well for a lot of reasons. It didn't survive because the USSF decided that they hadn't got the funds to be able to do it, which still amazes me to this day. The players that came onto that squad of players did a great job. We were in training as the Olympic team in training, and also the national team. And so a lot of the players that played on Team America went on to play more national team games and take the United States to a level that was respectable because some of their play in the North American Soccer League assured them of knowledge of how to play the game. I thought it was a great idea. That's why I accepted the invitation to play on Team America, knowing that having a full year and a full season of playing together should put the national team onto a different footing, and I know that it did. There were a lot of players that earned their positions and proliferated and played some great soccer. It was thinking and an experiment that was way ahead of its time.
For those people who weren't necessarily familiar with that team, some of those names that you would have played with then would be like Perry Vanderbeck and Boris Bandov.
Correct. Paul Hammond. Now I'm blanking out on all the names. I know them all, and I'll tell you them one at a time over a longer period of time. How's that? Jeff Durgan was the centre back. We had you said Bandoff, you said Perry. Yeah, I'd have to remember the others later on.
Ringo Cantinillo.
Yeah, Ringo Cantinillo. You've got a nice list in front of you. Keep on reading them off for me.
I do. Greg Villa.
Yeah. Well, Greg actually played for the Kicks, and so
yeah, he did.
He was a real strong 6'2" center forward that was brave as could be. Run like a gazelle, and great powerful player.
And
by the way, nothing surprises me that you made a comment that it kind of shocked you or surprised you that about the U.S. or the U.S. Men's Federation. Nothing surprises me about the U.S. Men's Federation, and I don't think it surprises much of anyone anymore. Never has, never will.
They certainly move in mysterious ways.
Yes, they do. It's a great way to put it. Hey, there's another question here. I think somebody asked something earlier too that I may have missed. Well, we can get to that. But they were wondering how many subs were allowed back then.
Oh my goodness! I believe it was 5.
Okay.
And we had, I think we dressed 7 or 8 on the bench.
I suppose with 5 subs, you had to have
well,
that
some
many on the bench.
games came. I mean, some of these games came fast and furious at you, and people don't realize how difficult it is to play in the United States because of the time differences and also the mileage distances of getting to and from cities, and how tiring that is, and how you get discombobulated with your fitness regime because of getting late from a game, traveling early the next morning, going to practice fields that were never really quite organized as well as they should have been. There were some problems within the protocols that were used to travel from Florida to Seattle.
Yeah, which it still is. I mean, today it's still a big thing, but back then it was really, really a mess. And I look back in the NASL days when they were trying to travel around. Things weren't quite as well. They were spread out. There wasn't as many teams in the NASL days, but NASL 2.0 days, I should say.
Yeah.
But that was the same thing. The players taking red-eye flights, expecting to train and be ready in a day, 2 days after that or something. So it's an issue. It's very different. We have a very different situation here in this country with the expanse.
Yeah. Well, I just remember the old USL where you had teams. You'd go to the Thunder would go play Seattle, and then the next night they were playing Portland. And teams would come in and play back-to-backs against Minnesota and Milwaukee just to save on the travel.
They'd usually try to play 2 in a weekend, so they'd play like Friday night and Sunday or something like that.
Now, we had situations where we'd play in Los Angeles, go and play then in Hawaii, then come back and play in Seattle, and then go back to Minnesota, all within 7 days. Crazy stuff. Yeah. And that's it. People don't understand. They think about the English Premier League and the games that they play, and that's tough. There's 40-plus games a year, but England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales will all fit into the state of Minnesota, and you've still got room for all the lakes. I mean, just such a small country compared to the vast prairies of the United States.
Sure. Someone's asking here about was the name Kicks and the blue and orange colors ever considered for the team that is now Minnesota United?
I don't think so, no.
I think they looked at all possibilities, but I don't think that there was all kinds of copyright issues, and I think they just wanted to go in a different direction.
I know for a fact because
marketing.
I know for a fact because I own that name.
Got it.
You own the intellectual property for the kicks?
Yeah, nobody has ever inquired about it.
Oh.
Okay.
So I know I can dispel that. I own the name Minnesota Kicks.
Okay.
That's very cool.
And you notice you evidently have given permission to Talisman because I'm wearing this very cool Minnesota Kicks hat, which I believe you have two of them.
I've got mine on order, and I'm just waiting for the green flag to go shopping again.
Yep. Talisman made this 5-panel cap up, Minnesota Kicks with the colors embroidered. It's pretty cool, actually. So
they put out a very cool Strikers jersey as well a while back.
Well, that's one thing I think I failed. Maybe I mentioned it, but you managed the Strikers for the last 5 years, something like that, when they were playing indoors.
Well, for their existence in the in Minnesota, yeah, it was 5 seasons.
Yeah,
that was indoor at the Met.
Indoor, and you used to get. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Brian. I didn't have anything.
Just at the old Met Sports Center, and used to have great crowds for that as well.
We did, yeah. We had many crowds that were full houses. We had a great marketing team. We had a great ownership. The actual squad of players were extremely good. We were always in the top 4 teams, as it were.
Oh, and over the bar.
What is the score now, Brian?
It's 3-1, I believe.
I believe it's 3-2 at the moment.
3-2. Sorry, 3-2.
Okay.
And Ace, you'll start seeing Ace a lot more in this half. You'll also, so keep an eye on Ace. So I do have a comment to make about him later, which you and I can talk about, Alan. But we'll watch him here. I think you're going to start seeing him pop up more and more here in this game.
Alan, one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, historically speaking, is 1979, the year this game was played, is where the Players Union finally started to come into existence for the NASL, and there actually was a strike, a 1-game strike, as far as I understand it, in April of this year, where a lot of teams fielded a bunch of players that had never played. They played 1 game only for the game that they got sort of drafted in. What was your experience with just being a part of that? I know you didn't play in the game that that was struck, but I don't know if that was because you were injured or you didn't want to cross the picket line.
On the ability of being the union representative for the Kicks, so that none of the American players would get any repercussions on it. Try to save them the heartache of having to deal with club management. So it was it was good for the game. Having that 1 strike there was worthy of the players and the principle of being a professional athlete and doing the things correctly, and it made for a better league. Unfortunately, there were a couple of franchises that failed, and then it was looked upon as being something that they needed to change completely. Strange times.
By the way, somebody asked if Willie Morgan, did he have the best tan of the team? He seemed to really like hiking up his shorts during the training session.
Well, his middle name was Elvis.
Yeah.
He was a total character. He was a Scotsman with with an opinion, and he was brash and brazen, and all of the other things that the caller questioned. Yes, he would have done all of those things. Best tan, best hair, whitest shirts, fabulous clothes, flamboyant behavior, and an exceptional player.
I think I don't know if it's Willie or somebody else. I think it's actually Willie, but there's a sign you'll see somebody holding up during this game in the audience or up in the stands. It's just kind of funny. Maybe we can catch it as it goes along here. So couple comments made by the same person. First of all, Chris Wright was the general manager of the Strikers. Is that correct? So,
correct. He was
that.
Tickets and sales, yes.
Yeah, and then Kick's trainer was Gary Smith, and he was also the trainer for the 1980 Miracle on Ice hockey team.
Correct. He kept me he patched me up with Band-Aids and stronger stuff for all of my playing career. So I think very fondly of Gary Smith whenever I hear his name.
So maybe that's something to talk about for a second. I mean, you don't often hear about that, but I mean, trainers are pretty key to professional athletes. It's the abuse you guys go through and how you depend on them.
That's it. It's Gary took care of all of the players. He was the only trainer that we had. He had for a little time there was an assistant trainer, but Gary Smith did all of the medical elements. He did the laundry. He took care of the kits. He took care of belongings. He was the locker room manager, and he wore many, many hats. And he was just fabulous to work with. When I was playing with the Kicks, and then with the Strikers, he was an obvious choice, and he never let anybody down. He is, and to this day, still a great friend, and honored to have been with somebody of his character.
Look at that pass by Ace. Just missed, but clever.
Back on defense for the Express. He's played every position but goal for the Express this season. Moffat back for Bradford. There's the textbook example of the wall pass. Furphy drops it left side for Steve Sargent, the left back moving up through midfield. Now for Moffat. Moffat for Trevor Francis, who comes way out to help. Chips it to the corner for Brian Tinian. Tony had nothing to do but knock it across the end line. It'll be corner kick Detroit.
I think Tony probably did the right smart thing there, because it was a tough position. The ball was bouncing, moving pretty quickly. If he tried to chip it back to Tino Letieri, then Tino's 5'8" might not have been enough to keep it out.
Let's see how the Express play this one. An unusual setup as Brian Tinian is 10 yards from the corner. Keith Furphy hangs the in-swinger right to the goal mouth, and the header just over the crossbar by Trevor, who cannot believe that he missed that opportunity. Trevor Francis, goal kick upcoming. A break in the action, the score. Minnesota 3, Detroit 2. We'll be back.
He never would have gotten the sniff if Allen was in there.
Got another question for Alan here in the chat, Brian, if you want to.
Sure. The question for Alan is, there was supposedly a party drinking culture for players in the English League in the 70s. First question is whether that was true. And second was that part of the culture in the NASL. And now if you ever watch the Cosmos, the documentary on the Cosmos once in a life or twice in a lifetime, what was that? Anyway, it's they definitely had a party atmosphere. But how was it for you guys here and other teams?
I wouldn't say it was a party time. We certainly enjoyed celebrating after a win and had a couple of adult beverages at that time. But I was young. I had a young family, so those were times that I brought over a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old when I came in '76, and so Going out and partying was not something that was in my wheelhouse. It was, certainly have a drink after the game, go home, have dinner, and then you're getting ready for the next game. So certainly nothing unusual. I think some of the young players got caught up in some of the atmosphere every once in a while, but that's almost to be expected. That's the culture, period, let alone just in soccer.
Here's Ace again.
I know you'd hear stories of legendary manager Brian Clough. He would send bottles of wine to the team dinner before a match to get the players loosened up. I'm guessing that's not really something that was part of the culture at the Kicks.
No, not at all. No. I remember situations in England with obviously with Brian Clough, and heard a lot of those stories. But we also had a couple of players with West Bromwich Albion where the trainer would give them a shot of brandy before they went out onto the field to do the same thing, to slow things down a little bit. But I don't know what an ounce of liquor does for you. It was something that wasn't in my pre-game preparation. I needed all of my faculties, period.
So one of the questions here also was, did you ever have friendlies against foreign teams?
Oh yeah, I mean with the Kicks, we played Ipswich and we played Glasgow Rangers and we played Hammarby. And I'm trying to think. There's got to be at least one more. It was usually one game a year, and I don't think we ever lost to a team that came in. In fact, all of my career with other teams, other than the Kicks, I don't think I was on a losing team.
Cool.
So it was. I mean, I remember Team America playing Juventus. My first game for the LA Aztecs was against Club America, and we won all of those games. So I think that tells you some of the qualities that the American teams had.
Alan, how long were the seasons? Because I watched this game, and knowing it was mid-August, and we know how things are in mid-August or early August or whatever in Minnesota. It's warm and it's humid, and that might play into it. But as we're starting to see a little bit here, there's a little bit sluggishness from both teams, but particularly Minnesota. It seems like there's some sluggishness here for a while. How many games did you play a season?
I think we were, what was it? 40.
Okay.
And so it's a short season. Oh, so you play a couple of games each week.
So pretty much what MLS is right now. They're at 38 games or whatever, plus some friendlies. So and U.S. Open Cup and other things. So pretty comparable schedule.
But their season is so much longer than we had.
Yeah, more time.
We would play May through July.
Right.
You know, as you said, that this is the last game of the season before playoffs.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot to be had for this game as far as points or anything. It was just more for pride, keeping fit and looking good for going into the playoffs.
And there was a lot of that with the Kicks, and so players were very professional in that area. And if things were going awry, you can guarantee that Willie Morgan is having plenty to say across the entire field to anybody who's not giving their all.
So the other thing I was thinking about was when you talked about not partying and that kind of thing. Freddie Goodwin. Now, I don't know if Freddie was manager in '79, but
no, he was. Roy McCrowan was the manager.
But he started the kicks. He got many of you players to come over from Europe, and he went over there. He was from there, but I mean, he visited with players over there, got them to come over, coached the first 3 years. Tell me, I mean, he was a pretty special guy, wasn't he? And he passed away, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. He finally passed away. But tell me about him a little bit.
Well, Freddie was the manager coach of Birmingham City, and that's the neighboring city and team to my team, West Bromwich Albion. They're 6 miles apart. And so he tried to buy me when he was the manager with Birmingham City about 4 times in the early 70s, 70, 73, 74. And West Bromwich Albion wouldn't sell me to Birmingham because they were too close. They didn't want me to come back and bite them on the proverbial butt, as it were. And so they wouldn't let me go. And so when Freddie came over to find players, he told me the stories of that, which cemented my belief in Freddie, that was a place that I wanted to go to. And I had a choice to go either to the West Coast or the East Coast, and I chose the Midwest. Figure that out. And so it was like I came to Freddie, we came into the Midwest. It was unique in terms of being in the middle of the country. Birmingham is in the middle of England, and so I have always been in the middle, as it were. So me coming to Minnesota was natural almost. I could sense that was the place to be. Freddie was great to me. He got a little annoyed with me when I was the union rep and obviously negotiating. And so that got a little out of hand, perhaps. But we always had great respect for each other. I actually coached his grandsons at the University of Minnesota. So there was a legacy going on even then. So I have fond memories of Freddie. Many times going out to his home on the lake in Prior Lake and having barbecues and team barbecues and celebrations. So lots of fond memories of him. He's a great guy and a good coach. I mean, he was a manager, a coach, and also an executive, and he handled himself extremely well.
You know, and to explain again to those that are younger the influence that the Kicks had on amateur soccer, on youth soccer, but beyond that, on the pro game. There's a great story that I'm forgetting his name. I feel so bad because he's a friend of mine. His name's escaping me right now. But he maybe Bruce can help me and message me or something. But there's a guy who's been a big soccer fan here for quite a number of years, and he's a librarian. Got his, I believe, Master of Science of Librarian and a library, whatever they call it. Anyway, he did a lot of research in Minnesota Historical Society and found a letter from Buzz Lagos to Freddie Goodwin, which is still in that box down there. And the letter was kind of critiquing a game, giving his view of things, and Freddie responded to him, and in turn, Buzz became kind of a scout for him. And, you know, and then Buzz, of course, as we all look at today, has the responsibility of starting the Thunder and then moving that forward to turning into MLS. So they're all so interconnected. It's pretty amazing to me, and just so grateful for all the people that were early on and kind of made all this happen.
Yeah, when you start to look at it and reflect back, there's a massive village that went in to make this legacy what it is now. Yeah, it's unique.
And that was Dylan Young who did that research, and he found a bunch of really cool stuff. They've got a box of Freddie's records from during that time, and some pretty cool stuff in there. So thankfully Dylan found that. So I have a copy of that somewhere, but it's of that letter, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen some of those archives. I've got all of the original 18mm footage of all of the highlight films.
Wow!
And reel after reel in my basement.
Huh. That should probably go to the Historical Society too. Actually,
I think they've fed up with all of the kick stuff that they've got there. It's going to have another home, I think.
Okay.
Well, we could get it digitized, and then it's
that would be cool.
Won't take up as much space.
Well, I've got a lot of Strikers stuff that's digitized, so because I think I've got every game the Strikers played on tape.
How much carryover was there from the Kicks to the Strikers team, both on the field and off the field?
Tremendous athlete.
It was pretty significant because there were a lot of players who stayed, and former Kicks players who were on that first year of the Strikers, and so comes to mind Tino, Alan Willie, Steve Litt. Myself, we were the backbone of creating that culture, and so the only culture that we knew in Minnesota was the one that we created in the name of the Kicks, and so that was pretty successful. So we made sure that we didn't reinvent the wheel. We made sure that we went forward and encapsulated all of those important moments to bring the game of soccer back to the state of Minnesota, because it had been absent for a couple of years. How's that game doing?
I believe it's still 3-2. That's quite an arm from Tino Lettieri right there.
So that was a question that someone had, and I wanted to ask this question. I know that Tino was only 5'8", not very tall for a goalkeeper. And I remember Kim. Actually, I remember Jeff Barnett in the early days, and then Tino Lettieri. Tino always had the parrot. For those that don't know, he had a stuffed parrot he always put in the goal. I'm not sure why, but he always put that parrot in the goal.
There's a prize if you remember the name of the parrot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
I can't remember the name.
Come on. Ollie.
What was it?
Ollie.
Okay.
Ollie the parrot.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, Tino is still in town. He lives in.
Yes, he is.
City.
Yep. Had his restaurant for quite a while. Then has his frozen foods thing.
Yep.
I believe.
Well, he has a bistro. He has a bistro now, right next to Minnetonka High School.
Okay. So the question that someone had asked was, did you ever prefer one keeper over another that you played in front of?
Yeah, the one that made all the saves.
Got that one right, huh?
Yeah, it's like the player who's in form, and Tino had a wonderful spell both with the Kicks and the Strikers. He was short, but he was massive in personality and gamesmanship, and so he was just totally different. And the good goalkeepers are a little bit crazy, let me tell you. just like you hear about hockey, they say the goalkeepers are a little bit off center, and that's exactly how Tino was. On the field, he just took on a whole different personification, and he became an actor, and he became an actor that ended up making great saves continually. So you put up with those antics when that happens.
Great goal there by Hamilton, I think.
It's amazing goal by Hamilton. He jukes left and right down the left side, keeps juking, finally goes hard to the end line and takes a shot to the near post, right really close to the keeper. Amazing goal.
It round the back, then round David Bradford, and then cuts in and really hits it from a very sharp angle. Absolutely beautiful goal.
For Hamilton,
kind of shows you about the left foot and also just great skill he had.
Well, I think I called that, didn't I, with his left foot?
Yep,
you did indeed.
That's why he dinks. That's why he dinks.
Display units and lets you create, revise, and recall information in a matter of seconds. So the Xerox 850 display system will remember, even if you don't.
That carriage ride.
You walked me home.
You lost the glove.
I lost the comb.
Ah, yes, I remember it well.
3 minutes remaining in the game. We remind you that Channel 50 will have the news right after the conclusion of this telecast tonight from Met Stadium in Bloomington, where the Kicks are defeating the Express by a 5-2 score. Next game will be this coming Sunday night, 7:30 at the Silverdome, the final regular season game for the Express against Tampa Bay. And then, unless the miracle of miracles occur, the Express will begin playoff action Wednesday night. Here's Trevor Francis going to get that third goal. He chipped it over Tino, but also over the crossbar. It'll be goal kick Minnesota.
Here those playoff tickets are printed. They're going to be in Hudson's, Farmer Jack's, all the usual outlets. Hopefully by Friday, certainly by Saturday. So they will be available. 7:30 game time on Wednesday.
I apologize again,
Tampa
folks.
Bay, really, I think that's what we have to say.
No problem. I'm back up.
Here's a break again upfield by Minnesota. Here's the cross. Sam Oates heads it high in the air, but
are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And the referee
Yep.
Hear the game.
Goal kick.
No, I haven't got the game.
No, it was a foul.
No.
So free kick Detroit. To Keith Furphy, under 2 minutes now. To Trevor.
There.
Took a hard bump from behind. The ball loose to Netzelenge. Netzelenge turning at midfield. Dumps it left side for Tony Watt. Good lead pass to the corner for Chico Hamilton. Hamilton lobs it.
I don't know if I accidentally may have skipped ahead a little bit when I
Here's what a shot that's blocked.
turned up the volume because we're up to 5-2.
Through midfield. Here's Osborne on a breakup field. Osborne still with room to move. Now leaves it for Trevor, but marked away by Nordquist, who certainly has to be the candidate.
Brian, there was one other thing you wanted to ask about Ace, as I recall, and I think maybe I've skipped past the point where you were going to ask that.
You see, it wasn't even a question as much as you watch him in this game, and it's kind of sort of how I remember Ace. He did these amazing things. I saw him once do. It's not a sombrero. It wasn't when you do the you take it with your heel and you flip it right over your head. And I saw him do that to a guy on the right flank once. Totally deked the guy out, put the ball over his head, over the player's head, sprinted onto it, and beat the guy and took a shot, and the shot was wild. And that's kind of how I remember Ace shooting wildly everywhere. And you see that in this game. He had 3 great attempts. All of them were high and wide. But if you look at his scoring record when he was with the Kicks, he scored a lot of goals, more than I remember. So he actually, I actually had written down the numbers. I looked it up to see if I can find it here. But yeah, he was something else.
You can get your playoff tickets now. That third goal scored by Tinian locks up the final playoff spot. Not the final, but a playoff spot for the Detroit Express. Ryan Tinian gets the goal.
Well, the Detroit Express just scored the 3rd goal that they needed to make the playoffs.
So here's the stats on that. He scored 50 goals in 155 games for the Kicks, which is really good for a midfielder. And then for Kaiser Chiefs, when he played for them, he scored 250 goals in 542 appearances. You know, and that's a midfielder. That's not a forward. So the guy could certainly score, but I just kind of remember him. I think he took a lot of shots is what happened. And, you know, a lot of the shots were off target, but you don't score unless you shoot. And he scored a lot.
Ace, Simone Bracalello, and Kai Kamara. That's full time. I think our broadcast is coming to an end, the actual game broadcast. But that doesn't mean that if anybody has any other questions for Alan, we can't still have a couple of minutes here.
Is Alan on? I see him on, but just audio-wise, is that it?
Yeah, I don't think you wanted to see my video anymore, did you?
Okay. I'm fine with that. I don't know. Is there anything else? I don't see any. Oh, somebody wanted to know if Ron Futcher led the team in fouls every year.
That would be a yes. Undoubtedly.
That's funny.
That would definitely be yes.
So, yeah, I think that's about it. I'm not seeing anything else from anyone. So I just want to thank Alan for spending the last 2 hours with us, and for everyone that we still got 30 people on. That's pretty good. Something to do with your Sunday night. I appreciate everyone coming and spending this time with us. And I had fun. Hopefully we can do something like this again soon. But Alan, thank you so very much for your time and for sharing so many of your stories with us back in the NASL days.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about the old days in soccer.
Absolutely. And Anthony, thank you so much for putting this together. Hats off to you, man, for coming up with the idea and executing it. So I think we learned a few things tonight, and we can get better for the next one that we do.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Brian, for getting Alan involved, and thanks, Alan, for lending us your time and your insight. It's always fun to talk with people who are actually involved in these games.
Yeah, pleasure being with you. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
I still like
Cheers.
that. I like it. Excellent.
All right, we have stopped streaming the